Peace, family. Y'all know who it is. It's Dr. Bakari K. Lumumba of LumumbaSpeaks.com. Back once again in conjunction with Bequaline Network, the Pan African social media extraordinaire, and the home of African Center News and Information. And we have a great show for you all where we're going to be interviewing Dr. Wilmer J. Leon III on the dangers of menstrual diplomacy. So make sure you hit the subscribe and like button, thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up, and hit the notification bell. So I'm going to give a brief introduction, and then we will bring, of course, Dr. Leon in. Wilmer J. Leon III is a political scientist whose primary areas of expertise are Black politics, American government, and public policy. For 11 years, he was a lecturer, teaching associate in the political science department at Howard University in Washington, D.C. Currently, Dr. Leon is a nationally broadcast radio talk show host on Sirius XM Satellite Radio Channel 126, nationally syndicated columnist and regular political commentator on national and international news programs. Dr. Leon earned a Bachelor's of Science degree in political science from Hampton Institute, a Master's in Public Administration from Howard University, and a PhD in political science from Howard University. He was a contributing author to Democratic Destiny in the District of Columbia. His latest book is Politics, Another Perspective, Commentary and Analysis on Race, War, Ethics, in the American Political Landscape. Dr. Leon is a regular contributor to truthout.org, theroot.com, politicsandcolor.com, blackstarnews.com, Black Agenda Report, Black Politics on the Web, and over 200 newspapers and other websites across the country. He can also be seen as a regular contributor and analyst on TV1's News Now with Roland Martin, Press TV, and RT TV. So without further ado, family, please help me welcome the man, the myth, the legend, your favorite political scientist, none other than Dr. Wilmer Leon III. How you doing there, Dr. Leon?
Oh, man. You know what? I'm doing so well. Yesterday, somebody thought I was you.
I appreciate that. Very good.
I thank them for the compliment. What can I say? Pleasure to be with you, man.
Yes, sir. Likewise. So we're going to jump right in. You wrote a rather searing article in the Seattle Medium titled "The Dangers of Menstrual Diplomacy." What led you to write the article, and why do you call it menstrual diplomacy?
Well, what led me to write the piece was a frustration that developed within me in looking at and listening to a number of African Americans in very significant, prominent positions advocating positions that were contrary to the interest of Black people. And what I think we can find through any recent search of history is that now, particularly on the international front, African American faces are being used to promote American neoliberalism, colonialism, and imperialism. And we can look at General Langley, for example, sitting before the Senate saying that General Traoré in Burkina Faso needed to be arrested. And some even, I haven't found where he said he needed to be assassinated, but some have inferred from the arrest that he was talking about assassination. That's a Black man calling for the arrest of an African leader engaging in anti-colonial behavior, trying to free and improve the quality of life for his own people.
Right.
You've got the former Secretary of Defense. Oh shoot, his name just escapes me. Anyway, he that went to Kenya to give William Ruto the check to back Kenya being the blackface on American hegemony in Haiti. Yes. You've got Kamala Harris, who went to CARICOM, trying to convince CARICOM to be the United States blackface. You've got Hakeem Jeffries went to CARICOM with her. So we have a number of very prominent African Americans who are being used by the empire as the face of American empire, and I just referred to it as minstrel diplomacy, because we know, minstrelsy, for the most part, excuse me, in the 19th century, we had white actors corking up or burning cork and blackening their faces, and basically trying to caricature Black people. And so that's why I now call it minstrel diplomacy.
So are you making the argument, I don't mean to cut you off, that now what we're seeing is Black politicians seeking to caricature white and U.S. imperialists?
No, we have Black elected officials becoming the Black face on white imperialism.
Got you. Okay.
That's the point.
Okay. Very good. Very good. In your article, you also discuss Plato and his concept of the noble lie.
Mm-hmm.
One, what is the noble lie, according to Plato?
Well, according to Plato, the noble lie is a myth or a story or a narrative that the ruling class tells in order to maintain social order, or also to convince the citizenry that an action needs to be taken, even though that action is actually not in their best interest.
And could you provide some contemporary examples of a noble lie?
Oh, absolutely. That Russia started a war in Ukraine. That Iran has a nuclear program that needed to be stopped.
Come on now.
Here's one. Palestinians are starving.
Okay.
Palestinians are not starving. That is a lie. Palestinians are being starved. There's a huge difference between the two.
Yes.
People starve primarily due to natural occurrences.
Yes.
Famine brought on by drought, or locusts come and eat your crops. And now or in the midst of a drought, your cattle and your other herding animals die and you can't feed. People starve due to natural events.
Yes.
Palestinians the food is on the border. A conscious decision has been made by Benjamin Netanyahu, by Donald Trump, and supported by AOC,
yes,
and Gregory Meeks and Hakeem Jeffries, not to allow the food into Gaza, intentionally starving Palestinians. So they're not starving, they're being starved.
Powerful, powerful. You also discussed the Eastern model of systems analysis. What role does that play in minstrel diplomacy?
Well, I think the key point in the Eastern model, which if you study, political science 101, you'll be introduced to the Eastern model, which has in it an element of a feedback loop. And it's that feedback loop that elected officials and other people pay attention to as you're trying to develop and formulate policy. You come up with this brilliant idea, if you formulate it into legislation, it gets passed, it gets signed. Now you have to implement it. And then once you implement it, you pay attention to what you've done, and there's this feedback loop where the data comes back and you make an assessment as to the success or the failure of your policy initiative. And upon analysis of that feedback, that's where you will tend to make adjustments. But now what we find on both sides of the aisle, the parties aren't listening to the electorate. So that feedback loop there's static in the line. They're not listening to the people that are most affected by the policy initiatives. And that to me, that's one of the elements that happens in a fascist in a fascist government, in a government that is leading towards fascism, and that also, I think, tangentially ties to the noble lie.
Got you. Makes sense to me.
Okay.
You mentioned Glenn Ford,
the
Black Miss Leadership class, and Amir Baraka's functionaries of the U.S. government. Can we do a deeper dive?
Sure.
What did Glenn Ford mean by the Black Miss? I mean, I couldn't understand, but what did he mean for the viewing audience by the Black Miss Leadership class?
There's a group of people who are paid most of them are paid very handsomely. Some of them just do it for gratis.
Right.
But they're paid very handsomely to operate in the best interest of the empire. And they become more concerned about their paychecks and their positions than they are about the best interests of the people. How can AOC vote to send more arms to Israel? You'll hear me say this quite often now. There was I don't know if you saw the video of this sister in Atlanta. Raphael Warnock was holding a town hall meeting.
Yes.
About a month ago. Did you see that video?
I did not.
Okay. Check it out. He's holding this town hall meeting in what was Dr. King's church.
Okay.
Because of course he's the
Ebenezer.
pastor. He's the pastor at Ebenezer. So a Palestinian sister stands up and she says to him, how can you back this? How can you back genocide in Gaza? And then she starts citing data. And the sister behind her says, show some respect. And the Palestinian sister turns around and says, show some respect. Make this make sense. Make this make sense. And so that has become my new mantra. Make this make sense. So when you talk to Kamala Harris, when you talk to Hakeem, when you talk to Gregory Meeks, when you talk to AOC, ask them or demand that they make this make sense. Why is it in the best interest of the United States, and particularly Black people, to reinvade Haiti?
Yes.
Why is it in the interest of Black people to overthrow Traoré in Burkina Faso and not back the alliance of Sahel states?
Correct.
Why is it in the best interest of Black people to ignore the starving of people in Gaza? What does make this so-called big, beautiful bill, make it make sense? Why is the cutting of my health care in my best interest?
Right.
But you can raise the defense budget 14%, and you can cut taxes on the wealthy, forcing states to cut school programs, to cut nutrition programs, to cut what we called in the day aid to family with dependent children.
Mm-hmm.
So you're cutting the social safety net. Make it make sense. Explain to me why. And then explain to me, and to me, this is the key. What are you going to do to make it better? Because that's what's missing. That's one of the key things, in my humble opinion, that's missing from this debate about the Epstein letters. Come on, really? That's all the Democrats have? That's all you got. You're not offering any substantive policy.
Right.
You're just telling me Donald Trump is an idiot. I know Donald Trump is an idiot.
Right.
Donald Trump tells me he's an idiot every time he opens his mouth. I understand that very clearly. What are you? So anyway, that's a tangent. So the Blackness leadership class.
Yes.
A cadre of people that are doing the job of empire, and their faces are being used, getting back to the minstrel diplomacy idea. They're convincing Black people that if you just stay quiet, if you stay calm and stay patient, yours will come by and by. Don't demand anything. Don't rock the boat, because then you're going to force them to have to do something that they don't want to do, because they don't want to anger their benefactors.
Right.
So that's a very long answer to a very short question.
Yes, sir. Functionaries of U.S. government.
Yes.
I think of Colin Powell.
Absolutely.
Colin Powell. So, of course, I was a mid-tyke at the time, right? And he gives an interview and he says, well, one of the best ways for Black people to advance in American society is to what? Join the military. Kwame Ture, also known as Stokely Carmichael, we know from Trinidad and Tobago, Bronx, New York raised, Hampton University educated, Pan-Africanist, stated, he pushed back and said, no, Black people will never advance by being mercenaries for white imperialism and white power. Would you argue that Colin Powell's statement is an example of being a functionary for U.S. government?
Yes. Well, first of all, I think Stokely went to Howard, not Hampton.
Okay, I'm sorry, Howard. Yes, he went to Howard. Yes,
he went to Howard, not Hampton. The answer to your question is yes, but at the same time, I think we have to really be careful how we examine African American participation in the military, because my father was in the Army. My uncles were in the Army.
Yeah, I served as well.
The black middle, the service in the military helped to create the Black middle class. So, and some will say, well, you can't hate the warrior and not hate, you can't hate the war and not hate the warrior. I understand all of that ideological stuff, but there are some practical realities in this as well. And, you join the military for the reasons you join the military.
And if I could, most people, I'm just speaking from experience, join the military not out of some sense of patriotism, but out of economic need, right? I can recall that, just very quickly, a brief pivot interjection. So when I would go on leave, if you served a week while you were on leave at your local recruiting station, they didn't count the leave against you.
Okay.
Right. And so when we would go out to, basically proselytize and recruit, we would only go to communities that was socially, economically challenged. Why? Because well, why don't we go to the suburbs? Why don't we go? They don't need it. They don't need it. They have options. Right. And so oftentimes what takes place is those in government are requiring or asking the least of us to give make the ultimate sacrifice. So just something to consider there, but go right ahead.
Well, and I remember when right before the United States went into Iraq, I was listening to a speech from Minister Farrakhan, and he said, speaking to the Black soldiers, he says, why are you in the military? He said, not because most of you believe in America. He said, because you need a job.
Yeah,
he said, you don't want to be he says, you're struggling financially. You don't want to be a criminal. You don't want to be a drag on your community. So you join the military. He said, you riding around in Volkswagens and these folks here are riding around in Mercedes Benz. He said it doesn't make it make sense. Mm-hmm. So anyway, so yes, Colin Powell did serve that role, and served it well. He did a great job in that role, and I really wish that there had become a point in his life, particularly later in his life, when he realized now is not the time to be the good soldier. Now is the time to be the good American and tell the country exactly what's going on and why. Unfortunately, he never got to that point.
Right.
So again, I don't question why someone joins the service. That's people join, as you just indicated. People join for different reasons, to fill different needs, but then it becomes a matter of what do you do while you're there, and what do you do when your commitment has been fulfilled? Are you gonna try to I had an uncle that was a Tuskegee Airman.
Okay.
And the Sacramento Kings honored him at my Uncle George. They honored him at a basketball game, and he was in a wheelchair. And they honored him because he was in his 90s by that point. And they honored him, and when they played the national anthem, he got up out of that chair and saluted that flag as erect and as upright as he could possibly be. And I asked him afterwards, I said, man, what, after all the stuff you told me about, all the things you went through, all the hell you paid based on race in the Air Force, how could you do that? And he turned to me and he said, boy, that's my flag. I suffered for that flag, and I'm not going to allow anybody to try to take that flag from me. I said, okay, huh?
Okay. Yeah.
I hear you and I feel you. But he spent his whole time in Sacramento fighting for fair housing for Black people, fighting for fair employment for Black people, fighting for education. He spent his whole time committed in the community, working for the community. And so with my understanding of his service in the Air Force and his service to the community, I couldn't challenge that position.
And I would say this, and we find a lot of people, particularly from that generation, and even now, and I can say this from someone who served in the military, when you go to basic training, it's brainwashing that takes place. Right. You are literally cut off from civil society, and they pumping, like you wake up in the morning, they're trying to play these patriotic songs. And so I would argue respectfully, right? Because I'm quite sure he's transitioned possibly.
Oh, yes, he has.
That is an example of someone who can't see the forest from the trees, right? And that
I would disagree with that.
Okay. And we probably could have that conversation. But many people, when Dylan Roof had his, he did his deplorable act in South Carolina, people was arguing, and they, this is result of the Confederate flag, and Minister Farrakhan, who I have issues with, but I think he was right on this situation, right? A broken clock is right twice a day, said, well, we suffered all of these indignities under the American flag, right? So what are we talking about here? So I think it would have been an example of someone who actually believes that we have these type of different identity conversations in the Black community, that they are American and not an African living in America.
Well, and I'll just say to your point that when I listen to my uncle, when I listen to my dad and my other, that generation of Black Americans from the South, there were a number, because they were all from Louisiana and Mississippi.
Okay,
folks I'm thinking about. They were from the South. There was a whole different mindset and motivation behind what they did.
Yes.
And again, I look at their service to the country and why they went, the double V, victory
Yes, double V
abroad,
campaign, absolutely.
victory at home.
Yes.
They were fighting in what they perceived to be an honorable manner.
Yes.
They were fighting for the country, and they were fighting for Black people as well.
Yes.
And when they came back and they realized that they had been sold a pig in a poke, as they would say in the South, they did everything in their power to back the community.
Yes.
So,
yes. Yeah, and Spike Lee's, I'm glad you spoke to that. Spike Lee's movie Miracle at St. Anna touches on that a little bit. The double V campaign, so on and so forth. Also, during that time, we were being told from the dominant media that if we served, we couldn't gain full citizenship. We were actually being told that if you serve, we will accept you as citizens. Now, we know that when we came back, that wasn't the case. I can even speak to how I was treated when I was in uniform.
Right.
And then how I was treated when I wasn't in uniform.
Right.
Right. So, absolutely. So, let's just keep moving. Hopefully, I didn't, digress too much.
Well, I know I did, but anyway, go ahead.
Minstrel diplomacy.
Yes.
Haiti, Hakeem Jeffries, Kamala Harris.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, when Kamala was vice president, and her father is from Jamaica.
Yes.
She goes to the CARICOM meeting to try to convince the CARICOM countries. Well, let me take a step back. The United States did not want to send American soldiers into Haiti. The optics of that, they thought would just be deplorable. So they were trying to find a Black country that would serve that purpose for the United States. And so they sent Kamala Harris and Hakeem Jeffries down to the CARICOM meeting to try to convince, because the CARICOM country said, we're not going to do it. Initially, they said, we're not going to do this. And then Kamala and Hakeem and some others went down there twisting arms, whether subtly or not so subtly, twisting arms, and they still didn't do it. That's how you wound up with William Ruto in Kenya, serving that role. And again, I'm drawing a blank on the brother who was the Secretary of Defense, Defense at the time. A frat brother of mine too, and I'm just drawing a blank on his name. Anyway, so again, that was the example that I was using in terms of minstrel diplomacy, Black faces on white American imperialism.
Right. I'm trying to see if I can find who was the Secretary of State before him. Give me 1 second. Was it Mark Esper?
No.
No.
It was oh shoot, what is the brother's name? It's Secretary of Defense.
Yeah. Can't find it.
Because there's a famous picture of him.
He's about Lloyd Austin.
Lloyd Austin. There you go.
Lloyd Austin. Yeah.
General Lloyd Austin.
Yes.
Right.
Wow. Oh.
Well, but see that also, and I'm not saying this to impugn the character of all Black generals.
Right.
But you have to ask yourself, and you would know this better than I, having served, what does it take? You got to make sacrifices to progress through the ranks.
Yes.
In that manner.
Yes.
And again, I know that not all Black generals fall into that, but you've got to ask yourself, just really quickly. I was in a meeting with some retired, they were colonels, Black colonels, in a business meeting with three of these brothers. And this was at the time when there was a lot of talk about Colin Powell running for president. So after the meeting, we were sitting around kicking it, and I said, let me ask you guys something. What what do you guys think about this discussion about General Powell running for president? And they all looked at each other as though to say, do you want to say it? No, you say it. No, you say it. So finally, one of them said to me, all three of us served with him at Fort Benning.
Mm.
And at Fort Benning at the time, there was just very clear racism, and the black soldiers decided that they were going to come together and that they were going to go to command, and they were going to demand from command that the situation and the circumstances on the base change as it relates to black soldiers. And then he paused and he said, Colin wasn't with us then, and he's not with us now.
Mm. Yeah, and I'm glad
that was the end of the conversation.
Yeah, because there was a scene in the movie Crash, right, where there was an incident where one of the police officers felt that his colleague, his battle buddy, his partner was racist. And the brother who was playing the LAPD police chief said, how do you think I got to this position? Right? Is by turning a blind eye to these type of issues. And someone who served in the military, when I was 23, I made NCO, right?
Okay.
And I remember creating the Black NCO organization in my unit and being told, well, if you keep pushing this, you're not going to continue to, progress in the rank at the speed that you have before.
To be promoted.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. You got decisions to make. Right.
It's what William C. Roden talks about in his book, $40 Million Slaves, this concept of racial know-nothingness. In this society, typically, we know folks like us, we are able to progress and be successful, not only academically, but from a career standpoint as well, by having a sense of racial or know-nothingness. But on a broader level, we tend to find that if individuals, this is what optometrists inferred.
But we still have decisions to make.
Yes.
We look, there's a reason I'm no longer on MSNBC. There's a reason I'm no longer on CNN. And it's not because I didn't have conversations with folks and that I wasn't offered programs, and it wasn't because I've been on the 43rd floor of 30 Rock, standing next to Lester Holt, who's from Sacramento, by the way.
Okay, yes, he is.
I've sat in those meetings. I was taken into up on the 43rd floor of 30 Rock, taken into the pool of producers and was introduced as, this is Dr. Wilmer Leon. He's going to be one of our next big analysts. Make him tired of us calling, make him tired of our calling him. 3 weeks later, I was done. So you've got to make that we no matter where we are in the space, we are always having to make decisions. Are you going to be true? Am I going to be on this show talking truth with you? Or am I going to be on MSNBC championing the narrative that Palestinians are starving, not being starved?
Great point. Africa, Russia, and U.S. Representative Gregory Meeks.
Well, the empire always needs an enemy. And right now, China and Russia are the two dominant enemies in the minds of the empire, because they are perceived as challenging. We're shifting from a unipolar or unilateral world to a multilateral world. That's just the natural development of the world. All empires die.
Yes.
The Greek Empire, the Roman Empire, The Ottoman Empire.
Yes.
Remember the sun
British
never
Empire.
sets on the British Empire. Well, it did. And now the U.S. empire is dying. It's on the wane. That is happening. And China and Russia are on the rise. Instead of the elite in this country realizing, you know what? We had a good run. Now it's time. We can't dominate. Now it's time to cooperate. They're still stuck on domination. And they're trying to convince the world that Russia, that Vladimir Putin is a madman. Vladimir Putin is evil. I don't know Vladimir Putin from Buddha House Cat.
Right.
And I don't know Xi Jinping. But I know I can see what they're doing. I listen to their representatives. I listen to Sergei Lavrov. I listen to Wang Yi, the foreign minister from China. I listen to what Xi Jinping is saying. I listen to what Putin, and one thing I find out about these guys, they're very, very consistent. They're consistent. If you listen to what they say, not the interpretations that you get on mainstream media, but if you listen to what these guys say, they're very consistent. And so now you have individuals that are paid handsomely by political action committees like AIPAC. Gregory Meeks, well paid by AIPAC. Hakeem Jeffries, well paid by Ralph Nate. There's a great piece in The Intercept. How does AIPAC shape Washington? We tracked every dollar. It's by Akela Lacy, Lacy, back in 2024. How does AIPAC shape Washington? We tracked every dollar. When you start looking at the amount of money that is contributed to Gregory Meeks's campaign by AIPAC, then you start to understand why he's a Zionist. You then start to understand why he's backing Israel. When you look at how much money, Kamala Harris is married to a Zionist. Her husband is a Zionist. Look at how much AIPAC put into her campaign. And folks, you have to understand the difference between Zionism and anti-Semitism. There is a huge difference between the two. Zionism is a political ideology, and Judaism is a religion. There's a huge difference between the two. I am talking about the political ideology called Zionism. I am not talking about Judaism. This is not an anti-Semitic conversation. And by the way, Semites, that's a language group. It is not, it's a linguistic category. It is not a group of religious people. That's a whole nother conversation.
We'll go. So I got some comments here in the chat.
Okay.
Hopefully we can kind of get to. So Prester John says, China has active contracts with Israel right now to build on illegally occupied Palestinian land. Gaza is next. He says China has not sent as much as a box of cereal to Gaza. So much for the multipolar argument. What do you say to these comments?
Those are very simplistic comments.
Okay.
Because you have to understand the role that China played in brokering the détente between, for example, Iran and Saudi Arabia. And you also have to understand, I don't know about the contract issue. I do know that Israel is a huge trading. See, these things exist on a number of levels. And so it's very easy to look at one level of a relationship and say that the relationship is going a certain way and ignoring another element of the relationship. So there are linkages that are there. I understand that. But that does not mean that we're not in a multipolar world. And also, final point on that, the United States tends to think in the very short term. The United States has only been in existence for 250 years. China's been in existence for over 3,000. So China has a longer view of history, as Dr. King talked about. The moral arc of history is long, but it bends towards justice. China has a entirely different view of time. Hence this phrase, "You have the watches, but we have the time." I think that was said by Iran. Mm-hmm. They have a much different view of time. People look at Iran and how they responded to this recent attack. Well, they should have done this, they should have done that. They're thinking on a whole different level than the West, because they've got their culture is over 3,000 years old. They've been around a long damn time. So I think that was too simplistic of a analysis.
Okay. Last but not least, Obama, mm-hmm. Israel and Israel. You mentioned that in your article as well.
Well, because the United States and Israel are operating in concert, and they were once called the largest unsinkable aircraft carrier that the United States has in the region, and they are operating based. Israel's operating based on its interests. We're operating based on our interest, but we have mutual interests. And so President Obama was nearly as Amiri said to me, Amiri Baraka said to me, they're functionaries of the United States government. He said, you can call them what you want to call them. In fact, in that point, he was talking about then the former Secretary of State, Condoleezza Rice. He said, you can, and he was talking about Colin Powell. He said, you can call them what you want to call them. He said, I don't care if you call them aircraft carriers. It doesn't matter. They're functionaries of the United States government. And when you start to invest or believe that they, in those positions, are operating in our best interest, you have become sadly confused, because they're not there for us.
Right.
They're there for empire. And I'm not saying that as a value judgment. I'm saying that as a political scientist who understands history. And if that's what you want them to do, then God bless you. But that's not, that's not why I would vote for him. That's not why I would vote for her. What are you going to do for me? What are you going to do for our community? What did Kamala Harris say in her in the first debate? She said, I'm not here for substantive change. She was very clear on that point. I'm not here for substantive change. Well, as a Black person, how can you not be? That makes no sense to me. That makes absolutely no sense to me.
Go right ahead.
So that's one of the things that I always find interesting when during the 2024 election, and I'm talking about Kamala Harris, and I'm challenging Kamala Harris, and I'm getting these questions. What do you don't like Black women? What do you hate Black women? What do you no. I'm asking the question, what is she talking about? What is she saying? What policy is she putting on the table that's going to make my life better? All I heard was Donald Trump is an idiot. Okay. But that's not going to pay my mortgage.
Right.
Genius is making complex ideas simple, not making simple ideas complex. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. Hopefully I'm making complex ideas simple. Hopefully that was the point.
Yes. So let me ask you this. What can we do to push back against the Black Miss Leadership class and minstrel diplomacy?
It's always funny to me when I'm asked that question, because the first thing you need to do is you need to make a decision for yourself. What is important to you? I have this saying on my show: the first thing you've got to do is take control of your living room. And then after you take control of your living room, then you can go out and take control of your front yard. And after you've taken control of your front yard, then you can start taking control of your neighborhood. And so for me, it all starts at home and it branches out from there. If there are crazy kids running through your neighborhood wreaking havoc, are you the parent of any of those kids? So before we call 911 or call the county's finest to come solve this problem with unruly kids tend to have unruly parents.
This is very true.
So the first thing we have to do as a community is, as individuals in a community, decide what's important to us. So I say, pick 3 things. And the 3 things, Dr. Bakari Lumumba, that are important to you might not be the same 3 things that are important to me. You might be very concerned about elementary school education because you have kids in elementary school. My son's 23 years old. So my interests may have shifted because the needs of my family have shifted. So once you decide, Dr. Bakari Lumumba, what's interest to you, and I decided what's of interest to me, now you got to start reading. You have to start reading about those things. You have to become knowledgeable about how those things operate in your space. And then once you become knowledgeable and start to get a sense of where do your property taxes go, or who's running your school board, or what's happening with the PTA in your child's high, whatever it is, you've got, and now you show up to these meetings having a command of the subject matter, and now you can start advocating for those very things that you claim to be so near and dear to you and your community. And you start to form alliances with like-minded people. So you, Dr. Lumumba, again, it might be elementary school education, and you say to me, "Hey man, I'm really burning about what's happening at the school around the corner. What do you think?" And I say, "Well, I don't have a kid in the school, but when I did, this is what we did. So this is what you might." So you start to develop alliances based upon common interest and based upon what you've read, based upon the command of the subject matter that you have. Now you can start making change. But if all you're going to do is sit there and complain about things you really know nothing about,
absolutely. So What we're
I
going to do?
I got a little more time, so if you want to.
Okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put the link in the chat, and so you can tap in, ask questions to Dr. Leon, and we got to go over the ground rules first because you know how I do. Now, I'm a stickler for rules. Number one, diversity of thought is welcome. So irrespective if you're on the left, the right, or right down the middle, we could come and have a conversation. We know that people do not learn if they operate in an echo chamber. Number two, no epithets or disrespect of any kind. This is a space of Black empowerment. We believe in the 3 N's of Black power: self-respect, self-defense, and self-determination. So you all know, if you start being disrespectful, then I'm going to pull you out like Sandman. This is what I do, and I will block you. Number three, we focus on facts, not feelings. That means you attack the argument someone makes, not the person. And then last but not least, I do not allow anyone on my platform to make claims or adverse to facts. You can provide an opinion, but you cannot make a claim that is patently false because it hurts my credibility as a scholar, academic, and of course, this is my platform. And I always give the example. You could be of the prevaricating belief that LeBron James is the greatest basketball player of all time. But if you were to state that he was the greatest basketball player of all time because Michael Jordan only won 2 championships, that is a patently false statement. So once again, family, the link is in the description. The link is in the chat. You could tap in, be part of the conversation. We have probably about 20 minutes left with Dr. Leon. And then, of course, we will bid him a thank you and hope he has a prosperous day. But let's just get here. I see.
Well, if you talk about LeBron and you don't talk about the big fella, you don't know what you're talking about. Anyway, go ahead.
So, yeah, Kareem. Yeah. So Pressure John says, how do we push back against Sino-centric Black progressives who make excuses for China's neo-colonial exploits in Africa?
I don't think that these are. China has a policy called win-win, and that's not a slogan. That's a policy. They go in and they do business deals with African countries.
Mm-hmm.
And they, for example, I think it was Ghana that grows cocoa or cacao.
Mm-hmm.
And Ghana decided that they wanted to start processing their cacao in country instead of just shipping the beans out of country to be processed. Right. Switzerland told Ghana, we will no longer buy your cacao. China came in and said, we'll do it. You guys process it. You guys grow it. You guys process it. We will buy it. China is involved in business. And from what I can discern, China doesn't come in and tell you how to run your country. China doesn't come in and tell you, who's going to lead your government. They do business.
Right. And I see here, Press John states, China hired international war criminal Eric Prince to provide muscle for Chinese mining companies in the Democratic Republic of the Congo.
I don't know that. I can't speak to that point because I don't know. I don't know that. So I got to move on that because I don't know that one to be true or false.
Right. Also, we had a statement from Snapshot Reviews. He says the thing that people like us can never get in front of the Powell and Obama types that dictate what's important to us. So I think he's talking about the influence, of course, of the Black misleadership class. And they are influential because they're put out, of course, in the mainstream media. They're quoted, they're on television. And oftentimes this is even pushed even from a secondary educational standpoint to where these are the individuals that you should want to be like.
And that's because in too many instances, we allow outside forces to pick our leaders, our leadership, and those that we should deem to be of value. And so, but we fall victim to that because we're not reading, because we're not identifying. Look, who assassinated Muammar Gaddafi and why?
Mm-hmm.
Barack Obama. So, but do we know that? Why is that important? If Gaddafi were still alive, do you think Traore would be talking to Gaddafi?
Yes.
Do you think the position in Burkina Faso would be even stronger with that's why Gaddafi was assassinated. But if
absolutely.
And Barack was the one to push the button.
Push the button, yeah. And I remember I was done with Barack Obama, and I didn't vote for him the second time. When he got on television in September of 2011, I will never forget this, September of 2011, and lied to the American people regarding, we talk about Plato's, the concept of the noble lie, and lied to the American people regarding why they were invading Libya. I said, I'm done. I said, I'm done. I said, I'm done. And I didn't vote for Romney, but I didn't vote for Obama either. I said, no, I'm done. So if you talk about that concept of the noble lie, and of course, Professor John, I see you're making a couple several comments about.
And again, I can't. Is it Preston John?
Prester John.
Okay, that's something that I'm going to have to look into because I'm not aware of that. So I can't. I don't talk about things I don't know about.
Right.
So unlike some of my colleagues. So I gotta, you can send 55 messages and
right.
Okay.
So a snapshot, I'm going to bring you in. Press John, if you want to be part of the conversation, ask some questions. So I would say this, we are aware that numerous entities, nation states have an interest in extracting the resources from Africa. No one is stating that America or the West has a monopoly on engaging in misgivings towards African people and African nation states. I think we are very clear.
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely. But I also know this. I know that Burkina Faso is launching satellites in conjunction with Russian enterprises and interests. I know that they are now building nuclear power plants in conjunction with China. So that,
understood. And you talk about Eric Prince. He's actually been attracted in Haiti, right? The Haitian government sought to bring him in, but we also know that's a puppet government in Haiti right now as well. So extremely complex issue. Snapshot reviews, SSR from the UK. What say you?
Good afternoon, Dr. Lumumba, and good afternoon, Dr. Leon.
Good afternoon.
I guess like the question that I have is like, in terms when it comes to like black misleadership, it seems like the pipeline for it is just never ending. Like there's just so many like just coming up. And when you are operating, I guess, in a system where, these politicians can take donor money from various different interest groups, and the minute they take that money, they're bought and paid for. Like, but how can we get a significant number of people with the right approaches or the right ideals that we align with into those positions when that is kind of what they're up against?
Well, I'm glad you used the term system, and it's also important to understand the power of the Citizens United case in allowing unlimited financial contributions to be made by corporations. That decision, I believe, has done incredible damage to our political system. But we have to start identifying and backing candidates that are truly operating in our interest. An example, Mamdani in New York, who's running for mayor as a socialist Democrat, and he won the Democratic primary, and now the Democrats are running from the guy, and because the Democratic elite are running from the guy. So now the question to me becomes, are who's going to step in and fill that void of support? Why would the Democrats run from a guy that won their primary? It's because he's operating outside of the system and outside of the traditional ideas that the Democrats want to promote. So when we find a candidate, you got to back the candidate. You got to back the candidate with financial resources. You've got to back the candidate with boots on the ground resources, turning out people to vote, all those types of things, while we develop another party, or at least another party.
See, the interesting thing about I can't pronounce his surname, Mandani, the guy you just mentioned.
Yes.
I mean, I kind of see him as just another AOC, really. I think he's just going to be all mouth and no kind of substance.
Based on what?
Based on, one, A, how close he is to her, but two, also, like you're saying, without those kind of systems in place, he's just going to end up caving under the weight of conforming, because that's going to be how he keeps.
Has he caved yet?
No, he hasn't.
Okay, then why are you projecting that he will?
Because I don't see any apparatus around him that will prevent him from doing that eventually.
Well, but see, that's what I'm saying. That apparatus has to be built. We have, if you're in New York and if you voted for him, and not you personally,
yeah,
then you have to become that apparatus. It becomes accountability. You've got to show up at his town hall meetings. You've got to show up in his office and say, hey, dude, no, this is not what I paid for. This is not what I voted for. And you can't just, one of the mistakes that a lot of people make is they think once they've cast their ballot that their job is done. That's when your job has just begun. Because he's up against an incredible systemic machine. And to your point, if you leave him to his own devices, he may very well succumb to the pressure. So it's up to those that vote for him to see to it that he doesn't. And if he does, get his behind out.
That's an interesting point. I mean,
you're predicting failure. You're already predicting failure.
Yeah, you are right. I probably have done that. But when the examples are so frequent and they almost follow like a cookie cutter amongst them,
right,
it makes it feel like it's inevitable that it's going to end up that way. Because if you look at her, she cuts off anyone who says anything in opposition to what she says now. Those people who voted for her AOC can no longer.
She was always a fraud.
Yeah, but they can no longer get in front of her to challenge her or push her that way.
But she was always a fraud.
Yeah. I mean,
so real quick. So when you say she was always a fraud, why do you say that?
Because when you looked at her background, she was not really who she claimed to be. She was not just this bartender that sprung up out of nowhere. And when she got elected, and she always voted with the Democrat elite. She speaks to the people. She says
so she has a populist rhetoric.
She has thank you.
But she's beholden to the oligarch.
But she's beholden to the oligarch. Didn't she just vote to send more money, send more arms to Israel?
Yep. Yes, she did.
How make it make sense? I don't get it. I do. That's rhetorical.
Got you. So once again, family, if you're watching, make sure you hit the subscribe and like button. We're having a great, incisive, in-depth political conversation with Dr. Wilmer Leon III on the dangers of Minstrel democracy. And we're now in the conversation portion of the interview. We have about maybe 10 minutes left because we want to be respectful of his time. See here, Gazette Bowl says her background was mass. That's right. I was recently educated by Sabrina Savati, who did a recent deep dive on her. Preston John says, no, it's called pattern recognition. Donnie is the obvious stage fraud. I would push back against that a little bit. I would argue that these type of things tend to happen if they do not have the not only support of the community, but also the community pushing them to actually engage in policy that aligns with the best interest of that community that political entity or individual is said to be representing.
And I would ask Prester John, and I ask this not to push back to say you're wrong, but you made the comment about staged fraud. Can you give me 3 examples of what Mom Donnie has said or done to support that point? If it's pattern recognition, where's the pattern?
Mom Donnie.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so once again, the link is in the chat, family, so you can tap in and be part of the conversation. We went over the ground rules, but if you want to tap in and be part of the conversation, you can, and you can answer that question head on.
Can I ask another question?
Yes, go ahead, Snapshot.
So with regards to like minstrel diplomacy, if we use Barack Obama as an example, there were a lot of people, especially like from the Black community, that were saying, you know, you can't criticize him, or you can't question him publicly, or you can't and stuff like that.
Yes.
What is it that fuels that? Because I think that is one of the main problems that perpetrate and enhance this kind of thing. Because why would he change, you know?
Yes, I would agree with you. I got a lot of pushback myself when I would critique some of the policies and decisions of Barack Obama. And I'm going to let you answer, Dr. Leon, but I remember one sister said, why are you doing that? You know, he's a Black man. And I said, well, part of living in a democracy is holding your elected officials accountable for their actions and behavior. I said not to do that not only would be a perversion of what we say is a democracy, right? But I said more importantly, would also speak to the soft bias of low expectations. The soft bigotry, of low expectations, right? So, because if we're not holding him accountable, then how can we then say that we're going to hold someone else accountable simply when the individual is of a different racial, ethnic group or background? So, but go ahead, Dr. Leon.
I would also ask or think that Kamala Harris fell into the same category. That when you challenge her, you got to say, and it comes from a matter of, I'll say, well, being politically starved, that it took so long to get a Barack Obama that when you finally got one, so I remember I'm 66. And so I remember being told when I was a kid, you can be anything you want to be in America. You can even be president. Wink, wink. And I knew that wasn't possible. But I understood the point. So now you break through. Now you get one. And an overwhelming number in the community flock to that success because we have become personally invested in that success. So when you turn and say to someone, that's a fraud right there, you're not only telling them he's a fraud, you're telling them their belief is fraud and their faith is fraud. Look, I remember when Clarence Thomas was going through his Senate confirmation hearing, and there were a lot of Black people saying, you got to give the brother a chance. No.
Yeah, I remember being a kid at the time, but I can recall those conversations.
You got to give the brother a chance.
Well, we did, and look what happened.
Well, and there were a lot of us that were saying, no, let me tell you what he's going to do based on what he's already done.
Yeah.
And so it's a faith, it's a flaw in us as Black people that it's the politics of personality that we tend to fall victim to, as opposed to the politics of policy. And so, go ahead.
Sorry to cut you. Do you think that's a generational thing? Because I know my mum, for example, will vote for someone because they're Black, and it won't be any reason more than beyond that where it probably should be.
It is unfortunately still, because my parents were the same way.
Right.
My dad was born in 1923. He would be 100 and 2, I think, or 3. So I'm glad you asked that question, because that does help to provide some clarity as to the why. It is not merely a generational thing, but yes, that contributes greatly to it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because, for example, when you look at Mom Donnie's success in New York, Cuomo spent an ungodly amount of money in terms of his ad buys on television advertising. Mom Donnie spent his money on social media. That right there shows you a generational difference. And it also helps to explain why, when you look at the demographics of his support, he pulled in that younger voting base, because he went and met them where they are.
Okay. Now, Cuomo.
And real quick, family, thank you, Mr. Sandman, for the super chat. I appreciate that. Got a comment from Preston John. He states, holding politicians accountable is moot in today. Politicians who are voted out often receive a soft landing as lobbyists, board directorships, think tank positions, and lucrative speaking engagements. I think there's truth to that. Zor is here.
No, I don't. I think that first sentence is just flat out wrong.
About holding politicians accountable. I would agree with that. Yeah, but I do think I would argue a lot do receive soft landings.
Oh, yeah, that's true. But no, the second part of that is true.
Yes.
The first part of that is wrong. And the first part of that doesn't really have anything to do with holding them accountable when in office.
Right.
So you combine two things that I don't think are true. And when I asked Prester John to provide some evidence about Mondami, he hasn't presented any yet.
Oh, very, very true. Snapshot, I think you had another question. Go right ahead.
Yeah. So, because I don't want to go off in a bit of a tangent or anything, but in your opinion, Dr. Leon, can the issues of or can a Pan-African agenda or a Black American agenda, if you want to call it that, be achieved through the American political system?
Yes, I believe it can be, if presented properly. Yes, because I believe to say no infers that the Pan-African interests are different than the interests of everybody else. And to a great degree, they're not. So it depends on, I think, on how you frame it. But I don't think that there are many things that are mutually exclusive in a Pan-Africanist approach to politics that that will prevent you from being elected. I think it has to be presented properly.
Well, both Barack Obama had...
Real quick snapshot. I think an example of that, if we look at Chokwe Lumumba Sr. and Jr., right? They ran on a Pan-Africanist platform, and they were both elected to, of course, the mayoralship of Jackson, Mississippi. Chokwe was a 2-term mayor in Jackson, Mississippi. So, as a matter of fact, not so innocent plug, my master's thesis, which is on my website, I talk about that, the politics of Black self-determination in the Southeastern United States. You could go check that out at LumumbaSpeaks.com, right? But I discussed that. So we do see that there I'm sorry?
Am I right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, if you say so, then I must be.
Snapshot, go right ahead.
But beyond being elected to those positions, were they able to enact any policies or get any things like that achieved? Any agendas achieved?
I'm sorry. Can you start that sentence again?
Sorry. With those examples that Dr. Lumumba just presented of those guys that got elected, beyond being elected, were they then able to fulfill any kind of agenda or any kind of policy that enhanced or pushed forward Pan-African agenda or a you know what I mean, or a Black American agenda? Were they able to actually do something?
Actually, yes, they were.
Okay.
Yes.
And let me say this, and this is not necessarily Pan-Africanist, but
okay.
If you come to the podium and run on a platform of improving education in your community for Black kids in your community, everybody wants better education for the children. If you come to the podium advocating better health care services for people in the Black community, everybody wants better health care. I can pick just about every issue that impacts our community and say, if, as Reverend Jackson said, the rising tide lifts all boats. So it depends on how you present the issue.
My issue with the rising tide lifts all ships analogy is the fact that not everyone's in the same size boat. And if that tide rises too quick and your boat ain't big enough, you're going to capsize. So, yes, there are universal agendas that apply to everyone, but those aren't necessarily inherently Pan-African agendas. Or they aren't necessarily things that are going to, if we're saying that other groups and other communities have a head start on where we are, just putting something in that we're all going to benefit from is just going to allow the other groups to accelerate even faster, even though we will move faster as well. But
no. What I was trying to say.
Yeah.
I was trying to speak to the commonality of interest, and that I was just providing examples of the things that are of interest to the Black community. If those interests are acted upon and improved, everybody will benefit. So it then becomes a matter of, how do you structure a position that articulates our need, but that convinces everybody else in the electorate that they benefit as well? And that's something I'm still waiting for the Democrats to do that, but they can't figure out any message at all. But I'm still waiting for them to, because a lot of times it comes, Dr. Lumumba, it comes down to the data. If I talk about education in Sacramento, and then I am able to present, I'm able to break that data out into ethnic groups and how different ethnic groups are impacted by a particular circumstance, and I include Black people in that data set, well, I can show how Chinese people in Sacramento benefit. I can show how Japanese people, and in Sacramento, they got a lot of Chinese, Japanese people, Dr. Lumumba. I can show how African. It depends to me on how you structure the argument, because the data is the data. You're on mute. You muted yourself.
We have time for 2 more questions, because
Okay.
Dr. French has to do a hard stop at 1:30 Eastern Standard Time. So we have time for 2 more questions. So Snapshot, if you have a question, then brothers and sisters, if you have a question that you want to put in the chat, please do so. Also, family, make sure that you're a blessing to the show. You could be a blessing to the show, of course, at Cash App, Lumumba Speaks, Venmo, at B Lumumba, and of course via the super chat. So Snapshot, go right ahead.
Yeah, I didn't have another question, but I will think about what you said. I'm not 100%. Okay. I don't 100% agree, but you have given me food for thought. So that's
good. Then mission accomplished.
Yeah, you've given me food for thought. I just don't think that. Yeah, I just think that from what I've seen with other programs, like when you look at things like DEI and all that stuff, it's generally other people that end up taking advantage of it because getting more out of it than necessarily Black people, because they are able to take advantage of some of those opportunities a lot quicker than some. I'm not speaking for all, but for some people. So
well, and if I could speak to that very quickly, snapshot. There's a great book, and I'm quite sure Dr. Leon is aware of the book. It's titled "When Affirmative Action Was White."
Ira Katz-Nelson.
Yes, and I've read the book. And so they argue that oftentimes what takes place in these situations is it's the way the laws are written and the way the funds or resources are, of course, distributed, right? That plays a role in why Black people get the short end of the stick. And that's what he talks about in that book.
Right here.
Yes, When Affirmative Action Was White. So I've read the book. Dr. Leon has read the book. I would implore everyone.
I've interviewed Ira. I know Ira.
Oh, cool. Well, great talking to you guys. Have a good rest of the day. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you know what I like about that?
Could you speak to this comment by Mr. Sandman? He says people are intimidated to talk to doctors about intellectual topics. What if that is true? Why do you think that's the case?
Well, it depends on. Well, you know what? That's on the medical side, and that's also on the academic on the academic side. That's because of the false sense of we have a tendency to ascribe or assign to someone with letters behind their name a level of, I hate to use this word, but I'll use it to make the point, superiority that is not deserved. Hey man, because folks that were at Hampton with me when I was an undergrad at Hampton will tell you, I knew that dude in his dumbest days, and there were a lot of dumb days. So, and my son will tell you, PhD stands for Please Help Dad. So, we put people on pedestals. Too many in the Black community, when going to a doctor for medical care, won't challenge or won't ask questions because we have assigned to them in our mind that they're above reproach. Mm-hmm. You know, who am I to question you? Well, who are you to question me? You're you. And in fact, that goes right to what I was going to say about what I saw. One of the benefits from Snapshot's conversation was we had a conversation. And he said, well, you know what? You've given me something to think about. Yeah. I'm not here to convince anybody of anything. I've done some reading. You mentioned the book. What was I able to do? Go to my bookcase and pull the book out.
And if I was at home in my home library, I would have been able to pull the book myself. Yes.
Which is why I always say read. Because the fact that you and I have read the same book, we now have a basis of conversation upon which we can have a conversation. You may have taken from Ira's book things totally different than what I've taken from Ira's book.
Right. But at least we would have an informed position at the very least. Absolutely.
It's called appeals to authority when people cite authorities to validate arguments. Okay. Okay.
So, family, I appreciate everyone.
Do you need me longer?
No. I think we're good. I know you said you had needed to do a hard
because again, if you need it, I can provide it. If not,
right. I just want to be respectful of your time.
Oh no, I'm cool. I'm good. I've got another 15 if you want to go.
Okay. Right. So, Prester John, you're more than welcome to tap in, be part of the conversation. As you know, everyone knows here at Lumumba Speaks, you do not have to cam up. You do not have to cam up to be part of the conversation. And you can use a pseudonym. We say this because we know that oftentimes individuals have jobs that may be public facing, and you may have positions that are non-traditional, that are contrary to public opinion, that if you promote those opinions, right, there may be some, of course, repression that takes place. So we are thoroughly aware of that. So if you like, you could tap in, be part of the conversation, use a pseudonym. You don't have to cam up.
Real quick, talking. This is about Joe Biden. I said 2.5 years ago Joe Biden, and I said this a lot. I said Joe Biden will not be the Democrats' nominee in 2024. I said this in 2022.
And what made you see that?
I saw the decline in his mental capabilities.
Okay.
I paid very, very close attention to the numbers. And his numbers were never good. And I listened to him. I said, there's no way in the world that this guy will be able to run for another, won't work. And people told me then I was crazy. I said, okay. So I say that to say sometimes, and you, Bakari, you know this as well as I do. It's not that I have a PhD in political science. It's that I pay attention to political science, and the degree is secondary to, because man, look, I know there are a lot of folks that read a hell of a lot more than I do, that can provide just as good, if not better, analysis than me, that haven't even graduated from college.
Yes.
So, but I knew what I was seeing. I knew what I was reading. I was confident in my analysis. And so I didn't let all that pushback deter me or dissuade me from what I was perceiving to be real. And I was found to be correct.
Absolutely. So once again, family, if you want to tap in, if you have a question, Dr. Leon says he could go for another 15 minutes.
I'll give you another 15.
Appreciative of him sharing his time with us. Preston John says the Biden family receives tens of millions from Chinese companies via the Penn Biden Center, and Hunter Biden is Chinagate 2.0. So I think you're kind of beating the dead horse here, Preston John, right? No one is speaking as if China is looking to not engage in some of the same imperialistic machinations of
how much debt has the Chinese Development Bank forgiven for African countries? Prester John, look that up. Look that up. How much debt has the Chinese Development Bank forgiven?
There seems to be like an automatic pushback to any African nation that seems to be doing business with people outside of the continent, and I don't quite fully understand it when if they're dealing with a partner that wants to do business. In the case of where there are Western nations that have tried to tell them, okay, we're going to give you this aid money, but in exchange for that, you have to push this policy and that policy and stuff that's of no value. People in those lands don't even know those agendas or have anything to do with it, but they just want to find a way to prosper and you know rise up their economy and stuff. But it's almost like people expect that a lot of these nations can't do equitable business with other groups, and that's not true.
Right. And I think that speaks to what, and of course, family, if you want to read the article written by Dr. Leon, it's in the description. I'll put the link to his article, The Dangers of Minstrel Diplomacy, in the description. But he talks about U.S. Rep. Gregory Meeks and how he was one of the individuals promoting, and you could please correct me if I'm wrong, sanctions against Russia, for seeking to do business with African nations. And please correct me if I'm wrong, because this may be an indirect quote, but his statement was that the African resources are for our consumption.
Correct.
And by our, they mean the United States.
Correct. And where is Patrice Lumumba University? It's in Moscow. Who helped with the liberation of Angola?
Russia.
Thank you. So, folks, you get locked into this Western
Cold War mindset.
There you go.
Yeah. That's just something to consider. Yeah, because I was having a conversation with one of my mentors, and we're going to bring him on the show soon. Kwaku Crow, he's a historian, extremely well read. Of course, he works for the history makers, and he was kind of pushing back against Russia. I said, well, Russia has a long history of supporting revolution and decolonial movements on the African continent. And he kind of got quiet, right? And so I said, look, I understand we could take issues with, Russia's, the machinations of course, the Kremlin, right? But I said, I am also aware of the fact that when there was help that needed to be sought, and we're talking about in terms of material help, not just in terms of rhetoric, but in food, clothing, weapons, resources.
Soldiers.
Yes, soldiers, they actually were there to help. And this is not someone who's, trying to put on for Russia or the Russian Federation.
Right. I was on a PBS show and also on at one point the Black News Channel when that was on. And this was early in the Ukraine-Russia conflict. And I was giving a chronology of events of how we got from James Baker in 1991 telling Mikhail Gorbachev, if you agree for the reunification of East and West Germany, NATO will not move any further eastward towards the Soviet Union. How we got from that statement to Russia in Ukraine. And I was giving the historic dates and events. And my alma mater pulled my contract to be the chair of the political science department. Simply for citing the historic facts.
But here's the issue. You were pushing, it was more than that, Dr. Leon. You were pushing back against the noble
dominant
lie, the dominant narrative. I remember having a conversation. I'm going to bring you in, Mr. Sandman, then we'll get you your comment, Max. That when we talk, I said Russia actually did not start this war. I said and please, you can speak to this better than I can, but there was an understanding between former nations of the Warsaw Pact and of course NATO that America would provide missiles to any country that had a direct border with Russia. That if so, that would be seen as an act of aggression.
Correct.
The same as when we had the Cuban Missile Crisis. Am I right or wrong here?
You're absolutely right. And why did we have a Cuban Missile Crisis? Why did the Soviet Union send missiles into Cuba? Because the United States had sent missiles into Turkey. A lot of people don't know this because that was part of the agreement of the Cuban Missile Crisis was do not explain to the public that the United States had to withdraw missiles, had to back down. That was the image of the United States being the dominant force was so important to the West that when the guy that slammed his shoe on the head of the Soviet Union at the time, I forget his name. When Kennedy and Nikita Khrushchev, when Kennedy and Khrushchev came to settle the Cuban Missile Crisis, Khrushchev said, well, you got to get these missiles out of Turkey that are pointed to my country. And Kennedy said, okay, just don't tell anybody I've agreed to do that. Folks, history's anyway,
Guys, Zeppo, I need you to tap in so you can make me aware of what Article 6 of the UN Charter is. So I need you to tap in very quickly. Max, great bill. When it comes to statistics and data, this is for you, Dr. Leon. Where do you start to get the most accurate facts?
Oh my goodness. Well, I think it depends. It depends on the issue. I don't know that I can. Let me try to answer your question another way, because I think Bakari, you would agree. It depends on the issue. But when you read something, you need to read at least 2 stories on a subject, better 3, from different sources, and ask yourself. So, for example, the Washington Post, the Guardian in Britain, and the Financial Times. Those are 3. You start with the Post because they will give you the headline. You always got to question their analysis, but they'll give you the headline. Then go to the Guardian and try to find the same story in the Guardian and see if the Guardian is following the line of the Post. Go to the Financial Times. Is the Financial Times giving you, and then ask yourself, does this make sense? That's something that that's a question a lot of people don't ask. They just say, oh, well, it was in the New York Times, therefore it must be. Mm-hmm. Or it was in the Wall Street Journal, therefore it must be. No. They have agendas. Yes. And they all have agendas. So if it comes to reading a story about Iran, I might go to Press TV. But because it's a story about Iran and Press TV is an Iranian news source, I got to verify it from other sources. So I can't tell you exactly where to go. I think you'd be better served listening to the process that I'm explaining, because again, you go to different sources depending on the issue that you're trying to answer. Or you can just call Bakari Lumumba and he'll answer your question.
Appreciate that. I appreciate that. Mr. Sandman from the 215, the Illidale team that is picked during Big Ten Media Day to win the Big Ten, but we know that won't happen. It's going to be the reigning defending national champion, Ohio State Buckeyes, once again being victorious. Mr. Sandman from the Keystone State, a Commonwealth, not an actual state. How can we help you?
Yes, good to speak to you, Dr. Lumumba and Dr.
Leon.
I'm sorry, Leon. And Dr. Leon. Nice to meet you. And I was going to be brief, ask a brief question because I'm at work as well too. And on Penn State being picked to win the Big Ten this year, that's good news for Pennsylvania. I'll have to keep my eyes open for the Penn State Nittany Lions, see if they can pull this one off. I mean, they're more traditional when it comes to college football because they don't put the actual names of the players on the back of their jersey.
Yeah, that's because the players aren't any good. That's why
they represent this, the football at its purest form instead of just trying to get your deal.
But Hampton's going to win the national championship.
Hampton.
Go Pirates!
Oh, hey, I'm always a proponent of HBCUs getting all of the best black athletes in the country. But
until that happens,
yeah.
Bro, go ahead, Mr. Sandman. What's your question?
Yeah, so years ago, and this is in conjunction or in association with the trade war that we're having with China. I recall years ago, and I wasn't really into the stock market, but this one young man that I used to work with, he was really big into day trading. And I recall when we were working, he always kept his laptop open to keep track of the trends. And then one day, out of the blue, he just screamed and slammed his laptop. I was like, "What's going on?" He was like, "China." He said they devalue their dollar, or the rupee, or whatever they call a dollar is, and that
the yuan,
a lot of yuan, and a lot
or the
of
renminbi.
The renminbi, yeah. So a lot of American investors lost a lot of money from that drop in devaluation of the dollar because there's so many American companies in China making money. But if the money that they're making is devalued against the American dollar, then I guess maybe that devalues the value of the stock of that company in the United States. I'm not sure how that works out, but I think there's been a trade war, and China is on the way to trying to take over the U.S. dollar as the world's currency. So do you think that's the impetus behind all of this strife that we're seeing in between the West, the United States, and Europe, and in between Russia and China? It seems like they're allying. And also, I believe, what's his name? President Reagan was the one who caused the USSR to collapse back in the 80s with his trade deals or his negotiation worldwide economic plans or policies. So it's almost like they're Putin and Russia and China, they're working together to like reestablish themselves as a world power economically and militarily. So what do you think is behind all of that?
Well, Ronald Reagan did bring an end to the Soviet Union by causing an escalation in defense spending. And right. We can see a lot of the problems that we're having in our economy today still as a result of those policies by Reagan. You mentioned China and Russia teaming together. Yes, they understand that they're both being challenged by the same force, which is the West. And we were just Dr. Lumumba and I were just talking about who started the war in Ukraine. The United States. Even Lil Marco Rubio had to admit it's the war in Ukraine is a proxy war. The United States is trying to start a war with China over Taiwan.
Right.
The United States trying to start a conflict with Iran. So the question I think you need to ask yourself is, and the United States tried to overthrow the democratically elected president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, and replace him with, what was that guy's name? Anyway, so I think you have to ask yourself, what? Look, we've all hung out on the corner, and you know the statement, don't start nothing, won't be nothing.
Right.
Ask yourself, why does the United States continue to start fights with people? And now what you're finding out is the United States is starting fights with people and can no longer win those fights. And so the China needs oil.
So you're calling the United States Deontay Wilder. Now I'm just messing with you.
So China needs oil. Who, you talk about the trade war. Who started the trade war? The United States. Who is imposing the sanctions on all of these countries around the world? The United States. Don't start nothing, won't be nothing. And so all these countries are doing is protecting themselves. They're hedging their bets. They're saying, you know what? We can't fight this monster by ourselves. We can't fight this monster alone, but collectively by forming BRICS, the Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa Economic Alliance. Oh, United States, you want to put sanctions on me and take me out of the SWIFT system and not allow me to trade off of the dollar for things that I need in my country? Well, we don't need you. We'll just trade in our own currencies with each other. Sanction away all you want. I'll just trade rupees or for rubles. I'll just trade yuan for whatever the South African currency is. And you know, it's not that they are starting fights with the United States. They are no longer coalescing to the dictates of the United States. And that now is forcing the United States to take more aggressive action. Prester John says, Putin was very clear on his position with regard to socialism in his interview with Tucker Carlson. So how is Russia so involved with Burkina Faso? Something is off. No, Prester, what's off is your analysis. Russia is anti-imperialist. That's what you need to understand. The fundamental element of Russian foreign policy is anti-imperialism. That's why they got involved in Angola. They were fighting imperialism. And China is anti-imperialist as well. When was the last time China invaded somebody? You got to go back to Vietnam, I think. to find the last time China sent its military into a foreign country. When was Russia went into Ukraine, but was provoked to do so. See, you got to get out of this Western mindset. And final point, do you remember when Joe Biden said, "I'm going to turn the ruble into rubble"? You remember that?
I do.
Did you know that Vladimir Putin has a PhD in economics?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people don't know. Not only is he an attorney, he has a PhD in economics. And he wrote his dissertation on nationalizing domestic industry and what that does to your economy. These guys are bringing people. When you look at Donald Trump, Marco Rubio, and you're going to put Donald Trump against Vladimir Putin in terms of mental horsepower. You're going to put Donald Trump against Xi Jinping. You're going to put Donald Trump against Vladimir Putin in an intellectual battle. You're going to send Marco Rubio to have a conversation with Sergei Lavrov, a man that has been a diplomat for 40 damn years.
And so, Prester John, I said you said no pushback. This is why I invited you to come on the platform to be part of the conversation, rather than just commenting in the chat. So
chirping.
We make space.
Chirping.
We make space. I make space for that. Like I said, we talk about diversity of thought. Last question, because we want to be respectful of your time.
Right, sure.
Max says to the whole panel, is there any advice or suggestions on sparking the interest of children on these particular subjects being spoken today? So I would go first, and this is almost anecdotal for me. My experience growing up with my parents, who are still married to this day, 48 years, and even with my children, was my mother at a very early age, I'm talking about maybe 3 years old, instilled in me a love of learning, so that part of my personality was to be intellectually curious, right? I can recall my sister, who's the oldest in my family, she would, throw shade my way because I would play sports and I would make the all-star team, go to the banquet, get the trophy, then I would go home and actually read the encyclopedia. And my sister would say, who in the French toast reads the encyclopedia like it's just a regular book? Or I would go to football practice, or I would have a game and I would score 2 touchdowns, and I would come home and read the encyclopedia or peruse through the dictionary or a history book. So I would argue one of the ways to help with young people is one of the proverbs that we oftentimes use is teach them early. You can inculcate a love of learning, a normalizing the sense of intellectual curiosity. We talk about oftentimes Black children are groomed to be athletes and entertainers. You could groom Black children to be intellectually curious.
The exact same point, just said a different way. You've got to engage the kids. You've got to engage with them. You have to, first of all, you can't teach what you don't know.
Yeah, that's true.
And you can't engage in things that you don't understand. So when you hear something on the news, when you see something, ask them, why do you think this is? Why do you think this is that way? How would you like it to be? What would your solution be? Why would that be your solution?
Yes. Push them to think critically. Absolutely.
Push them to think critically. And you can't, just really quickly. My son was about maybe 7 years old. It's around Christmas. We're having breakfast, and he sees a commercial, and it was for some toy. And when the commercial was over, he said, "Daddy, I need that." And I said, "Really? Why?"
Mm-hmm.
And so we then had an entire conversation at 7 years old about marketing and the power of marketing. Absolutely. And why commercials are on television. And the final question to him was, are you smarter than the television, or is the television smarter than you?
Wow. Powerful, powerful. And family, very quickly, just respectfully, Dr. Leon, he said Christmas family, but he actually meant Kwanzaa Eve. I'm joking, right?
Oh, you're right.
A joke.
I'm sorry.
That's a joke. Snapshot reviews. And do you have an answer to Brother Max's question before we, of course?
Where's the question?
Yes.
Oh, you were asking somebody else.
Oh, sorry, I had to take a phone call, so I had to not been listening. Sorry. All right, I'm gonna dip out of the studio. It was good. It was good talking to both of you today. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, Dr. Leon, I appreciate you answering my email. I appreciate you responding, and I definitely appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come and be on my platform.
Well, there's a charge, there's a cost for this. You got to reciprocate and come on my show as well.
I would love to.
We'll make it happen.
I would love to. Until next time, family, y'all know what to do. Always, always, always bet on black. Peace. Before you go, make sure you hit the subscribe and like button. Thank you for supporting the channel. And remember, here at Lumumba Speaks, we always bet on black. Peace.